I never thought I'd be the kind of guy who'd fall for someone at work. I mean, construction sites aren't exactly known for workplace romances, right? It's all hard hats and power tools and guys trying to prove they're tougher than the next person. But then again, I never thought I'd be the kind of guy who'd fall for another guy at all, so I guess life had other plans for me. My name is Mason, and I've been working construction for about 5 years now. Started right out of high school when I realised college wasn't for me. I'm good with my hands, always have been, and there's something satisfying about building things, seeing them go from blueprints to actual structures that people will live in or work in. The pay's decent, the work keeps me in shape, and most days I genuinely enjoy what I do. The thing about construction is that crews change all the time. You work one site for a few months, then you're on to the next one. You get used to meeting new people, working alongside them for a while, then probably never seeing them again. It's transient, and I liked that about it. No pressure to form deep connections, no workplace drama to navigate. Just show up, do your job, collect your paycheck, go home. That all changed last spring when they brought in a new guy named Theo. I remember the exact moment I first saw him. It was a Tuesday morning, unseasonably warm for April, and I was already sweating through my shirt by 8 a.m. Our foreman, a gruff guy named Martinez who'd been in construction longer than I'd been alive, walked onto the site with this tall, lean guy trailing behind him. Martinez was pointing at different areas, explaining the project, and the new guy was nodding, asking questions I couldn't hear from where I was standing. What I could see, though, was that he was different from the usual guys we got. Most construction workers have this weathered look, you know. Sun-damaged skin, rough hands, that particular slouch that comes from years of physical labour. This guy looked fresh somehow, clean. He had dark hair that was just long enough to curl slightly at the ends, and even from 30 feet away, I could tell he had this energy about him, this brightness. Martinez brought him over to where I was working on framing. "Mason, this is Theo. He's going to be with us for the foreseeable future. Show him the ropes, will you?" I pulled off my work glove and shook his hand. His grip was firm, confident, but his palm was smooth. Not a lot of calluses yet. "Nice to meet you," I said, and when he smiled at me, something in my chest did this weird flutter thing that I immediately tried to ignore. "Thanks for showing me around," Theo said. His voice was warm, friendly. "I'm still pretty new to this, so I appreciate your patience." "No problem," I managed. And then I spent the rest of that first day trying very hard not to notice things about him. The way his shirt stretched across his shoulders when he lifted materials. The way he laughed at jokes, this full, genuine sound that made other people want to laugh too. The way he'd push his hair back when he was concentrating, leaving a small smudge of dust on his forehead. I told myself it didn't mean anything. I'd always appreciated when someone was good looking, right? That was normal. That was just recognizing objective attractiveness. It didn't mean I was attracted to him. There was a difference. Except I couldn't stop thinking about him that night, or the next day, or the day after that. Theo was a quick learner, I'll give him that. Within a week he'd picked up the basics and was actually pulling his weight on the site. He asked smart questions, listened carefully to instructions, and never complained about the grunt work that new guys usually got stuck with. The crew liked him. Even Martinez, who rarely had a good word to say about anyone, mentioned that Theo had potential. We fell into an easy working rhythm. I'd teach him techniques, he'd help me with my tasks, and we'd talk while we worked. At first, it was just surface-level stuff. Where he was from, how he'd ended up in construction, what he liked to do on weekends. He'd moved here from 2 states over, needed a fresh start after a bad breakup, wanted to do something physical instead of sitting at a desk all day. I told him about growing up here, about my family, about how I'd always liked building things even as a kid, but gradually our conversations got deeper. He told me about his ex, a woman who'd cheated on him with his best friend. I told him about my dad walking out when I was 12, and how I'd basically raised myself while my mum worked 2 jobs. He talked about feeling lost sometimes, like he was supposed to be doing something more with his life, but he didn't know what. I admitted that I felt the same way, that some nights I'd lie awake wondering if there was supposed to be more than just work, sleep, repeat. It felt easy talking to him, natural, like I'd known him for years instead of weeks. And that's when I started noticing other things. The way my mood lifted when I saw his truck pull into the parking lot each morning. The way I'd volunteer to work on tasks with him, even when I could have done them alone. The way I found myself telling him things I'd never told anyone, sharing thoughts and fears and dreams I usually kept locked away. The way I'd catch myself staring at him when he wasn't looking, memorizing the line of his jaw, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the grace in his movements despite the rough work we were doing. I was in trouble, and I knew it. The realization hit me fully one afternoon in late May. We were working on installing windows on the second floor, just the two of us in that section while the rest of the crew handled other tasks. It was hot, the kind of oppressive heat that makes the air feel thick, and we'd both stripped down to our undershirts. Theo was on a ladder and I was steadying it, handing him tools as he needed them. He reached down for a screwdriver and I handed it up to him. Our fingers brushed, just barely, just for a second, and I felt it everywhere. This electric current that shot up my arm and straight to my chest, making my breath catch. Theo must have felt something too because he paused, his hand still touching mine, and looked down at me. Our eyes met, and for just a moment the whole world seemed to stop. I could hear my heart beat in my ears. I could feel the warmth of his skin against mine. I could see something in his expression that I couldn't quite name, but that made my stomach flip. Then he took the screwdriver, smiled this soft smile, and went back to work. And I stood there, gripping that ladder, realizing with absolute clarity that I was falling for him, maybe had already fallen for him. And I had no idea what to do about it. I'd never been with a guy, never even really thought about it before. Sure, I'd had a couple girlfriends over the years, relationships that fizzled out because neither of us were really invested. I'd always chalked it up to not having met the right person yet. Now I was wondering if maybe I'd been looking in the wrong direction all along. The next few weeks were torture. I became hyper-aware of everything about Theo. The way he'd rest his hand on my shoulder when he was making a point. The way he'd seek me out during lunch breaks, choosing to sit with me even when there were other spots available. The way he'd sometimes catch me looking at him and hold my gaze just a beat too long before one of us looked away. I started lying awake at night playing conversations over in my head, analysing every interaction for hidden meaning. Did he feel it too, this pull between us? Or was I projecting, seeing what I wanted to see because I'd finally admitted to myself what I was feeling? I was terrified of what it meant, of what people would think, of ruining the easy friendship we'd built. Construction sites aren't exactly known for being progressive spaces. I'd heard enough casual slurs tossed around, enough jokes that made my skin crawl. The thought of anyone finding out how I felt about Theo, of becoming the target of that kind of talk, made my stomach turn. But more than that, I was terrified of losing him. If I said something and he didn't feel the same way, I'd lose the best friendship I'd had in years. We'd still have to work together, and it would be awkward and painful, and eventually one of us would probably request a transfer just to escape the tension. So I kept quiet. I pushed down what I was feeling and tried to act normal, even though normal felt impossible when every cell in my body was aware of his presence. Then came the afternoon that changed everything. It was a Friday in mid-June, and we were wrapping up for the week. Martinez called me into the site trailer, which was unusual. He was sitting at his desk looking at some paperwork, and his expression was serious. "Mason, I need to talk to you about a transfer," he said without preamble. My heart sank. A transfer? Yeah. They need experienced guys on the Riverside project. It's a big job. Good opportunity for you. More responsibility, probably a pay bump. You'd start Monday. Riverside was across town, at least a 40-minute drive from where I lived. More importantly, it was a different crew, a different site. I wouldn't be working with Theo anymore. "I don't know," I said slowly. "I'm pretty settled here. The crew's good, the commute's easy." Martinez raised an eyebrow. "This is a career move, Mason. The kind of opportunity you don't turn down." "Can I think about it?" "Sure, let me know Monday morning. But I'm recommending you for it, so unless you have a really good reason to say no, I'd take it if I were you." I left the trailer feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. A transfer? Away from Theo? Maybe it was for the best, I tried to tell myself. Put some distance between us, get over these feelings, move on with my life. But the thought of not seeing him every day, of losing our conversations and our easy partnership, felt unbearable. I found Theo by his truck, loading up his tools. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. Martinez offered me a transfer to Riverside. He stopped what he was doing and turned to look at me. "Oh, when?" "I'd start Monday if I take it." "Are you going to take it?" I shrugged, not trusting my voice. There was something in his expression, something I couldn't quite read. Disappointment? Or was I imagining it? "That's a good opportunity," he said finally. "You should probably take it. Yeah, probably. We stood there for a moment and the silence felt heavy, loaded with all the things neither of us was saying. Then Theo cleared his throat and went back to loading his truck, and I walked away feeling worse than I had before. I spent the entire weekend agonizing over the decision. The logical part of my brain said to take the transfer. It was good for my career, it would solve the problem of my feelings for Theo, it was the smart move. But every other part of me was screaming not to go, not to leave him, not to give up the best thing that had happened to me in years, even if it was just friendship. By Sunday night, I'd decided to take the transfer. It was the right call, the mature call. I'd tell Martinez first thing Monday morning, work out my last week or two on this site, and then move on. It would hurt, but I'd get over it eventually. Except when I got to the site Monday morning, Martinez called me into the trailer before I could say anything. About that transfer, he said, and his expression was somewhere between annoyed and amused. There's been a complication. A complication? Theo came to see me Friday afternoon, after you left. Martinez leaned back in his chair, studying me. He told me that if you got transferred, he'd quit. The world seemed to tilt. He what? Said he'd put in his notice, effective immediately if I moved you to Riverside. Told me you were the best partner he'd had, that he was learning more from you than anyone else, that it would be a mistake to break up a good team. Martinez's eyes were sharp, assessing. He was pretty adamant about it, almost seemed personal. My heart was hammering so hard I was sure Martinez could hear it. What did you tell him? I told him I'd think about it, and I did. The thing is, he's right. You two work well together. Productivity's been up since he joined the crew, and honestly, I don't want to lose a good worker over a transfer that's not strictly necessary. He pulled out a form and made a mark on it. So I'm recommending someone else for Riverside. You're staying here, unless you really want to go. No, I said quickly. No, I'll stay. Figured as much. Martinez gave me a look that suggested he understood more than he was saying. Get to work, Mason. I left the trailer in a daze. Theo had threatened to quit if I got transferred. He'd gone to Martinez, risked making things awkward, put his job on the line just to keep me here. That meant something. That had to mean something. I found him on the second floor, measuring for drywall. He looked up when he heard my footsteps, and there was something vulnerable in his expression, something open and uncertain. Martinez told me what you did, I said. Theo set down his tape measure. Yeah? You threatened to quit if I got transferred. I did. Why? He was quiet for a moment, and I watched him gather his courage, saw the exact moment he decided to be honest. Because I couldn't stand the thought of you leaving. Because working with you is the best part of my day. Because He took a breath. Because I've been falling for you since the day we met, and I know that's probably not what you want to hear, and I know it might make things weird, but I couldn't just let you go without saying something. My breath caught. All the air seemed to have left the room. He was looking at me with such raw honesty, such hope mixed with fear, and I realized I was standing at a crossroads. I could play it safe, pretend I didn't feel the same way, protect myself from the risk and the fear and the uncertainty. Or I could be brave. I could take the leap. Theo, I said, and my voice came out rough. I've been falling for you too. I just didn't know if you felt the same way. I didn't know if I should say anything. The smile that broke across his face was like the sun coming out. Really? Really? I've never felt this way about anyone before. It's been driving me crazy. He took a step closer to me, and then another, until we were standing inches apart. I could feel the heat radiating off him, could see the flecks of gold in his eyes. So what do we do now? He asked softly. I don't know, I admitted. I've never done this before, any of this. Me neither, not with a guy. His hand came up, hesitant, and brushed against mine. But I'd like to figure it out. With you. I threaded my fingers through his, marvelling at how right it felt. How natural. Yeah, me too. We stood there, holding hands in the middle of an unfinished building, and I felt something settle in my chest. Something that felt like coming home. Like finding a piece of myself I didn't know was missing. We should probably keep this quiet at work, Theo said. At least for now. I don't know how the crew would react. Agreed. Martinez might be cool with it, but some of the other guys... I didn't finish the sentence. We both knew what I meant. So, we'll be careful. But outside of work... He squeezed my hand. Outside of work, can I take you to dinner? Like, a real date? I grinned. I'd like that. We heard footsteps on the stairs and quickly stepped apart, both of us grabbing tools and trying to look busy. One of the other workers poked his head in, asked us a question about measurements, and left. The moment he was gone, Theo and I looked at each other and started laughing, giddy with relief and excitement and the sheer impossibility of what had just happened. That night, Theo picked me up at 7. He'd made reservations at a small Italian place on the edge of town, somewhere we were unlikely to run into anyone from work. I'd changed clothes 3 times before he arrived, nervous in a way I'd never been before a date with any of my ex-girlfriends. But when I opened the door and saw him standing there in a button-down shirt and jeans, smiling at me like I was the best thing he'd ever seen, all the nervousness melted away. Dinner was perfect. We talked for hours, the conversation flowing as easily as it did at work, but somehow deeper, more intimate. He told me about realizing he was bisexual in college, about the fear and confusion and eventual acceptance. I told him about my own recent realizations, how I'd spent weeks trying to deny what I was feeling before finally admitting it to myself. I kept thinking there was something wrong with me, I confessed over dessert. Like I'm 23 years old. Shouldn't I have figured this out by now? There's no timeline for self-discovery, Theo said gently. You figure things out when you figure them out. There's no wrong time. When did you know? About me, I mean. That you had feelings for me. He smiled, a little sheepish. Honestly, pretty much immediately. That first day when you shook my hand and smiled at me, I thought, oh, I'm in trouble. And then I got to know you, and it just kept getting worse. Or better, I guess, depending on how you look at it. I thought I was going crazy, I admitted. I never felt that way about a guy before. I didn't know what to do with it. And now? I reached across the table and took his hand. Now I'm just glad I don't have to hide it anymore. At least not from you. After dinner, we walked through a park near the restaurant, our shoulders bumping companionably. It was a warm night, the air full of the sound of crickets and distant traffic. We found a bench away from the main path and sat down, and I felt Theo's hand find mine again in the darkness. Can I kiss you? He asked quietly. My heart stuttered. Yes. He leaned in slowly, giving me time to change my mind, but I didn't want to. I'd been thinking about this for weeks, imagining it, wondering what it would be like. When his lips finally met mine, soft and warm and perfect, I understood why people wrote songs about kissing, why it was such a big deal in movies and books. Because this was everything. This was rightness and belonging and coming home all at once. We pulled apart after a moment, and I was breathless, dizzy with it. Theo was smiling at me, his eyes soft in the dim light. Wow, I managed. Yeah, he agreed. Wow. We sat there for a while longer, talking quietly, stealing kisses, learning the newness of this thing between us. Eventually, we had to leave, had to return to the real world. But everything felt different now. Better. Like I'd been seeing in black and white, and someone had suddenly turned on the colour. The next few weeks were a careful balance. At work, we were professional, friendly, nothing more than good co-workers. But the secret we shared made everything feel charged, exciting. Stolen glances when no one was looking, hands brushing as we passed tools, the knowledge that at the end of the day, we'd get to be together for real. We fell into a rhythm. Dinner dates at out-of-the-way restaurants, movie nights at his apartment or mine, long drives to places where we didn't have to worry about being seen. We talked about everything, learned each other's histories and habits and dreams. He told me about wanting to eventually start his own contracting business. I told him about my secret love of cooking, how I'd taught myself from YouTube videos because my mom was never home for dinner. One night, about a month after our first date, I cooked for him at my place. Nothing fancy, just pasta and salad, but he acted like I'd made him a 5-star meal. After dinner, we ended up on my couch, and one kiss led to another, and suddenly we were tangled together and it felt so natural, so right that I wasn't even nervous. He kept checking in with me, making sure I was okay, and I loved him for that care, that consideration. I didn't say the words out loud that night, but I felt them. I love you. I'm in love with you. This is it for me. At work, we were careful, but Martinez wasn't stupid. I'd catch him watching us sometimes, a knowing look in his eyes, but he never said anything. As long as we did our jobs and didn't cause drama, he seemed content to look the other way. Some of the other guys, though, were less observant. They'd make their casual jokes, their thoughtless comments, and I'd feel Theo tense beside me. We'd exchanged glances and I could see the hurt in his eyes even as he laughed it off. It made me angry, protective. I started speaking up more, shutting down conversations when they went in that direction, and if anyone thought it was weird, they didn't say anything. 3 months into our relationship, Theo brought up the idea of telling people. We were at his place, curled up on his couch watching a movie neither of us were paying attention to. "I'm tired of hiding," he said quietly. "I know it's complicated with work, but I hate that we can't just be ourselves, that we have to pretend." I understood what he meant. I felt it too, the weight of the secret, the constant vigilance. "What did you have in mind?" "Maybe we start small, tell people we trust. Your mum, maybe, my sister, and then we see how it goes." The thought of telling my mum made my stomach clench with anxiety. We'd never talked about this stuff. I had no idea how she'd react. What if she doesn't accept it? Accept us? "Then we deal with it together," Theo said firmly. "But Mason, you can't live your whole life afraid of what other people might think. At some point, you have to choose to be happy." He was right. I knew he was right. "Okay, let's do it, but together. I don't want to do this alone." "You'll never have to," he promised, and kissed me softly. We told my mom the following weekend. I'd invited her over for dinner, and Theo came too. She liked him immediately, which helped. Over dessert, with my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest, I told her that Theo wasn't just my co-worker and friend, he was my boyfriend. The silence that followed felt eternal. My mum looked between us, her expression unreadable, and I prepared myself for the worst, for disappointment, for rejection, for having to choose between her and Theo. Then she reached across the table and took my hand. "Mason, honey, I just want you to be happy, and I can see that he makes you happy." She smiled at Theo. "You're good for him. I've never seen him like this before." The relief was overwhelming. I felt tears prick my eyes, and Theo's hand found mine under the table, squeezing tight. "Thank you," I managed. "That means everything." "I'll admit it's a surprise," she said, "but a good one. You deserve love, baby. You deserve to be with someone who sees how wonderful you are." We spent the rest of the evening talking, really talking, in a way my mum and I hadn't in years. She asked questions, listened to our story, and by the time she left I felt lighter than I had in months. Theo's sister was equally supportive when we told her over video chat. She actually laughed and said she'd suspected something was up from how he talked about me. "You get this tone in your voice," she teased, "all soft and gooey. It's disgusting. I'm happy for you." With our families knowing and accepting us, the rest felt easier. We started being more open with close friends, people we trusted, and one by one they all accepted us, supported us, celebrated with us. Work was trickier. We still kept things professional on the site, but we stopped hiding quite so carefully. If people figured it out, they figured it out. Martinez definitely knew, and he made it clear through his actions, if not his words, that he had our backs. When one of the workers made a comment that crossed the line, Martinez shut it down immediately and made it clear that kind of talk wasn't welcome on his site. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of discomfort, still people who couldn't quite hide their prejudice. But we had each other, and we had allies, and that made all the difference. Now, 6 months after Theo threatened to quit if I got transferred, we're stronger than ever. We've started talking about the future, about maybe getting a place together, about what we want our lives to look like. Theo's serious about starting his own business, and I'm planning to go in with him as a partner. We make a good team in work and in life. Sometimes I think about how close I came to taking that transfer, to walking away from the best thing that ever happened to me because I was scared. And I'm grateful every day that Theo was braver than I was, that he was willing to risk it all just to keep me close. I've learned a lot about myself these past months. That love doesn't always look the way you expect it to. That sometimes the person you're meant to be with is someone you never saw coming. That being brave enough to be yourself, to be honest about what you want and who you love, is worth any risk. And I've learned that when you find someone who makes you want to be braver, who sees all of you and loves you anyway, you hold on tight and don't let go. Theo's asleep beside me now, his head on my shoulder, and I'm watching the rise and fall of his breathing in the dim light from the street. In a few hours we'll wake up and go to work, and we'll spend the day building something together, and then we'll come home, and we'll keep building this life we're creating one day at a time. It's not always easy. There are still challenges, still moments when the world reminds us that not everyone accepts who we are. But we face it together, and that makes all the difference. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy who'd fall in love on a construction site, but I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad that Theo walked onto that site last spring, that he threatened to quit rather than let me go, that he was brave enough to tell me the truth, because he didn't just save my job that day, he saved me. Total char count 24,847.